So, do you ever read reviews? Like if you're going on a trip, like so TripAdvisor or Yelp or something like that,
yep,
or
yep.
Google reviews as well.
All that, yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was an interesting article on the value of reviews to readers in the article "Perfect Information: Customer Reviews That Influence Purchasing Decisions," written by Tom Van Laer.
Everybody loves a story. Look at that subhead.
Everybody loves a story, exactly. And that's the gist of this article was about research done by Van Laer and his colleagues about what makes a good review. What do people like? And surprisingly, what makes a good review, meaning one that readers think is useful, is how the review is written. In particular, does it tell a story? Is there a narrative to it? So, this place is awesome or this place sucks. It has little value to people. They know what you felt about it, but they don't know why, and they don't know the context. And savvy reader, I know you do the same thing when I read reviews, is that doesn't tell me why they thought it was so great or why they thought it was so awful. And without a context, a review is almost meaningless, right? It has very little value. So what Van Laer says is that the most useful reviews are those that transport the reader by conveying a sense of who and where and when. Those are the most useful. And Van Laer and his colleagues did this really interesting study. They analyzed almost 200,000 reviews from the things to do in Las Vegas category on the travel-related review site TripAdvisor. So you can, if you go on there, you can say, you've probably done that, things to do in wherever I'm at, right?
That's right.
And TripAdvisor will come up when there'll be all these reviews on different things. So they used a computer algorithm to show the relationship between combinations of words used in the review and the helpfulness of the reviews as measured by reader ratings. Now some of you see that, you look at a review and a rating will be, itself will be reviewed.
Was this helpful to you?
Was it helpful or not? Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
They found that the more a review offered insight into the reader's state of mind, the greater its helpfulness. How do you know a reader's state of mind? If the reviewer basically writes a story, there's a narrative, right? And he's saying this is what happened. A good review also starts with a punchline or the takeaway, and then tells the story. So in essence, a good piece of a good review is really journalism. For those of you who might be familiar with this, kind of the standard journalism model is what they call the inverted pyramid. Most important fact up on top, the very first sentence says, man bites dog.
Right.
That's the punchline.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is the story of decreasing importance in facts as you go around. And we call that the inverted pyramid.
And those who aren't in the media business don't know that was designed by AP or EPI, so they could cut.
They could cut at any point. Yeah, exactly.
Depending on the length they needed, so you got the most information.
That's right.
At
Yeah.
the top.
If you design it that way, you can cut it to length
anywhere you want.
Anywhere you want. Yeah. Punchlines at the top.
That's right.
Van Laer says something very interesting about the implications of this narrative for those who read reviews. He says, when reading online reviews, you should consider what the reviewer's state of mind was, where and when their experience took place, how emotions flow across the review, and where the climax is. In that way, you consider who is writing the texts and what their helpfulness really is. So I usually, to kind of describe this, I usually jump directly to the negative reviews. Because if somebody likes something, well, that's awesome, but I want to know, why didn't you like it? And usually, very often, this place was awful, the manager was rude. Right? But very often you will see a narrative that kind of describes, I showed up, the person who met me at the counter was really rude, my room wasn't made up, and they tell this whole story, I got there with my wife at, 5 o'clock in the evening and blah, 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 and they tell this story. And in that story, you can tell, is this just a person who's normally a crank? Because a lot of times you can tell this is just a cranky old person, right? You see it all the time, cranky old person. But other times you can see it's thought out, and you can tell sometimes, usually, where there is a legitimate beef with what happened. And understanding that, you understand the context of their story, it gives you a better feel for why this place may have gotten a negative review, and is that or is that not important to you?
Right. And there's a subtext here that Van Laer is not talking about, which I thought about when I read this piece, is this idea of the value of this narrative, of the story, especially for the good reviews, negative reviews, no, in this context I'm going to say, but for the good reviews in particular, it's why you're starting to see professionals write these reviews. I mean, you don't know that, you know, but you know, PR agents for these companies are often going out to Yelp and TripAdvisor and these places, and they're writing them. They're not really users. They know how to create a narrative. They know exactly what you're talking about, that pyramid of information that you're looking for. They know the punchline. They know how to make it a narrative really emotionally hit. So there's some of that going on here too, where the really well-written ones, especially obviously all the really good ones, many of them are written by professionals.
You can almost tell those though,
because
they're too good, they're too slick. They're too slick, right? I actually, one review I saw was it was about a hotel on the outskirts of Santa Rosa. And it was almost all negative reviews, and the words that came up most often was prostitutes, gangbangers, meth lab, bed bugs, and there was even like somebody had submitted a picture. It was Yelp. It was their arm, and their arm is like completely covered with bites.
Jeez,
like, Yeah, I guess I won't be staying there.
I think I stayed in that place. Didn't I?
Sounds awesome.
Didn't I send you guys to that place to do a video shoot once? I think I
Motel 5.5.
Well, I'll tell you, that's that. But you know, that's really gets to the psychology of how you motivate people to take an action or not, and that goes to the heart of quality too.